We're going to get started. Full house. I like what I see. You've chosen wisely. For Susan Korda, Kill Your Darlings. This is a masterclass by Susie on editing. And Susie is, I'm the coordinator of the editing studio. Susie is a longtime mentor with the editing studio. So back in our maiden voyage 7 years ago, Susie was there, helped to sculpt the program, and yeah, she's the queen bee of Berlinale talents. And she's a director, she's an editor, she's a script consultant, she's a teacher as well at Columbia University, but Binger Filmlab in Amsterdam, and Scottish Documentary Institute in the Edinburgh College of Arts. And yeah, this usually Susie's Kill Your Darlings masterclass goes about 2 hours. But backed by popular demand, we're going to give you the extended remix. So it's going to be 3 hours long. We'll take a break about halfway through so you can stretch your legs, use the toilet. And yeah, she's going to show clips from some of my favorite films like Jaws, Bonnie and Clyde, Alien 3, For All Mankind, film that she edited herself, Oscar nominated. Anyway, I couldn't be more tickled pink that Susie is here, so yeah, enjoy. Susie.
Am I on now? Yes, okay. Hi, thank you. Yeah, we'll be taking a break, and if I understand, it's a festival, it's the campus. If you need to head out to another function, it's not a problem. The diehards will stay, or not. This is called Kill Your Darlings. I just want to know, how many of you have already seen this? God, you guys, I don't know, okay. Well, there's some more stuff here. Aliens 3 won't be in here, but 7 will, which I think is really fun to analyze. How many of you are producers? Thank you. Directors? Writers? You can also be sharing hats there. Composers? Thank you very much. One composer. Come on. And those of you, who will not raise your hand no matter what I ask? Thank you. Got you. How many of you are editors? How many of you love editing? How many of you, thank you, well that's good. More hands went up with love editing than were editors. This is a good thing. How many of you really get anxious, if not hate the editing room? Okay, well that's honest. You know, I'm sure there are more of you, by the way, because we all get anxious. We're all like hum to hum to hum. The only thing I know and helped me in my journey was I realized I had done it once, so I probably could do it again. But the beginning was, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I hope you don't mind cursing, because I'm going to do some of that. So anyway, Kill Your Darlings was something that William Faulkner, the Nobel laureate from the southern states, as I lay dying, he admonished his young writing students to kill their darlings. They got too attached to one sentence, one paragraph, and I call it stilts. And we've done it with screenplays, right? We have that one scene we love, and we write around it so nothing will disturb the scene. So the scene is very rich, and you've got these stilts holding it up that you call the rest of the story, which is what the detriment is in holding on to a darling. Now in film, it's a lot more expensive to kill a darling because you go and you shoot, and then you have this wonderful shot. For instance, Danny Boyle is known to kill his darlings. Well, he doesn't actually kill his darlings. What he does is he sacrifices something to the editing room gods before he starts. So as we know, he's very visceral, right? Danny Boyle did Trainspotting 28 Days Later. I want to say Salam Bombay, but I'm really saying, what? Slumdog Millionaire, right? So he's very much from the gut. He does not storyboard. He goes out there and he shoots. And he goes in the editing room, and he takes his favorite Steadicam shot, which must have cost him at least 50 grand, and he doesn't use it. He doesn't even try using it. So that's kind of like the offering. It's like, please make this go well, please. Because we don't really know what's going to happen, and this is a narrative, let alone documentary, where you really don't know what's going to happen. So, so the subtitle of this is, let's see if this is going to come up. Right? How do we become aware, accept what's going on, because our demons will come in and tell us that we really fucked up. And if we don't tell us, it doesn't tell us that we fucked up, it tells us that the director of photography fucked up, or the editor fucked up. Somebody has to. It's called the blame-shame game. And it just does not help us get any further. So how do we just get into acceptance in a really great place? And what's the action we should take? I put a little, let's see if this works. So the action we should take is play. I like that. I'm not going any further with that. That was the one little thing. You're not going to get anything more funny than that then. So that is at least my approach. I mean, you know, Danny Boyle, that's his approach. That's fine. As long as we can also, part of playing is also accepting our process. So screenplay writers are told to show, not tell, right? Show, don't tell. But what we do here is actually, I mean, this is a problem with showing when you get to the editing room, is that you're talking down to your audience. It corners us into rational thinking and attaches us to rhythms, right? How many times have we put something together and we have it in front of us and it's like, I see it, why isn't the audience seeing it? Why aren't they feeling it? Well, because it's not an essay. It's much more, well, musical. But not only that, this is the main thing we do. How do we get to this experience? We play. Again, we play. So in this case, we have, that's Rebbe the dog. Then Rebbe the dog died, and my cousin's kid made Rebbe the angel, right? Within like, I don't know how he did it. I mean, can I do this? I hope it doesn't hurt your feelings. Or, and he came up with the angel. Or what I like to do is I use my props. These are my props. This is man with a black hat sees woman with the red hair, and he wants to get to know, hey, can I, don't go, what are you getting in my way for? Go, but I have a lollipop. Oh, I like lollipops. Ooh, right? You're beginning to laugh. If I keep this up, you begin to see a guy with a black hat and a woman with the red hair, right? But it's just two pens. It's like when we watch kids play, right? And they're not asking, does my audience know that this is a man with a black hat and that she's with a red hair, right? So if we get into the play and we get out of our heads trying to make sense, because what happens in the editing room, what I find is that we get what I call creative autism. Everything is of the same valence, right? Your performance as well as that boom that came into the shot is as important, right? That shadow that I will see. I was recently in an editing room and there was maybe 12 frames of a shadow of a boom in a shot, and the reflected through, you know, the shots like this, and here's the little reflection. But it was disturbing the director. And if you have the material to cut around it, that's fine. And if it's really that important to you, fine. But for me, ultimately, that's the distraction that we need to continually get ourselves out of. How do we get into play mode and not into the audience is going to see this or think this, because they're not. It's an experience. And it's living in not knowing that we have to actually get used to. And step back and experience. So in a way, we're like actors. Right? We're there in the moment, experience the uniqueness of this moment. That's what we want from actors. This moment, this moment, this moment will never come again. And this uniqueness is what we bring into creativity. And this is what we actually have to recreate or allow to unfold to get the audience to really feel it in their blood. And if we are showing, we're never going to get that experience. And as one editor earlier today said to me, it's like this, the amazement, losing track of the amazement that we need to feel in the editing room. The first blush of that excitement when you see rushes, maybe as an editor, not as a director, because directors are going to be beating up on themselves. It didn't work, this and that, but how to stay in this wonderment that is part of play. It's part of who we are. So, and it's really hard in the editing room. But we are like actors. We know the line that's coming. If you're an actor, you know the line that you have to recite for the most part, right? But you have to be in the moment that allows that line to come out, that dialogue to come out as if it is of the moment, not planned. So I'm going to give you just tools here that have worked and that will help you in the vertiginous moments, you know, when you have that vertigo in the editing room. Continuity, eyeline, performance, what should I story, where am I going to focus? You know, it's like, oh God. So I'm going to give you something to hold on to. I don't know what the next card is. Oh yes, I do. It's telling me. But we're not only like actors, we are also like composers. Let's see if this is going to go. So, going back to showing, does a composer show their music? No, they give it as an experience. So, how do we get there? First, misconceptions. I expect questions later to challenge me on this, by the way. So, these things are not important. How many people think these things are important? Or have always believed these things to be important? Thank you for being honest. Nobody else? Oh, come on. Yeah, thank you. Anybody? What is this, Chinese to you guys? No. We've all been here. So, no, story does not have to be clear. Match cutting. By the way, match cutting, I call it cutting for physics. It always bumps. I mean, I've seen hundreds of student films where they're match cutting, and I always ask, how many times you spend 5 hours on that? On the Steenbeck, people were spending 7 hours, you know, getting that, the close-up of the hand on the doorknob, just right with the wider shot of the hand on the doorknob, and it doesn't work. Why is it not working? Because it's cutting for an optical that doesn't really work, that doesn't really reflect reality, and it's certainly not the rhythm, right? You're trying. And I've had this question, why so many people I know, who award-winning, one of them is an Oscar-crowned producer, who will look at the 180. Everyone knows who does not know what the 180 is? Okay, if you have a camera set up over here, two people over here, right, in dialogue. If the camera's over here, they're facing each other, right? Looking camera left, looking camera right. If I jump the camera here, which is crossing this 180, the two faces are looking in the same direction and not at each other. So that's a confusion of eye line, it's called, and I'll go over that somewhat. But he looks at this, I mean, and that's just, I mean, it's true in a dialogue that you need to follow that. I mean, the way you can break it is by somebody getting up or turning around. There's a lot of choreography you can do that you can change then the camera angle on. But this person looks at it and finds it and makes it a problem when it isn't a problem. And then people look at continuity. How many people follow continuity errors? My brother loved doing that. Oh, I could see this continuity, that continuity, that. I was like, really? Did you enjoy the film? Obviously, because you got to see continuity errors. Now, it's true, usually you see continuity errors if you're not actually involved with the emotional line of the film. It's amazing. Once you're in the emotional line, the same continuity error isn't an error because it's not noticed, which I'll go over when I show you, I mean, any number of these films, but the first one that I like to show is Bonnie and Clyde. So I asked myself, why? Why all this attention to what we see in editing and not to what we experience? Because the experience, as in life, is a mystery. We don't know how this, it's amazing that films get made in the first place, but editing, the juxtaposition of two moving images is the only art form that comes of film. Everything else existed before, and we know this, right? Story, directing, sound effects, even for the stage, music, all existed before. But this thing that's so much like a wake dream, and dreams are mysteries to us too. It's so, and it's penetrating. I mean, we experience films and stories through films and experiences through films that aren't necessarily stories before we're even verbal, if our parents allow it, before we could read. This stuff penetrates us and reflects us. So the reason people look, in my opinion, to what they can see is because it's the tip of the iceberg. It's the only thing they can really make sense of. And they put these rules on it. And that's why we came up with these really shitty rules, starting with establish the environment, then go in to your medium shot. The most boring shot in the universe is the medium shot. I don't know what it is. It cuts me off from my belly or something. Not that anyone shouldn't use it, I'm just saying that's my attitude towards it. You know, then you can go to the close-up, and don't do this, and don't do that. And anyway, so we're going to look at Walter Murch, how he approaches, how to, anyone not know this book? In the blink of an eye? Take note of it, it's wonderful. It's a lecture he gave in 1994 in Australia, and now I think it's in its 5th edition. And in there, Walter, Professor Murch, gave us the 6 points to cut for. And I'll explain briefly what these things are, okay? So, right? Performance, truth. I mean, we know, how many documentaries have we seen when some character expert is talking and we know they're lying through their teeth and somehow the film doesn't address this? And at the end of it, we're kind of like blah. I mean, this is a great thing to do when you watch films, is to go, why don't I care? That's much more interesting than when you're excited about a film, though that's also another way in. But when you realize you don't care and you analyze the film, you can start seeing what's not, things like that, the truth is not coming through, or the rhythms are too monotonous and therefore it's pushing you out instead of pulling you in. We could say rhythms might have a cultural significance, but I'm not going to go into that now. So story and plot, which is related to emotions. He just split these up to give us an insight. It's not like one doesn't necessarily relate to the other because it's very watery. But the difference between story and plot is the queen is dead, the king is dead. Story is the queen is dead, the king died of a broken heart. Right? That's from E. Cummings. Right? Energy in relation to story. And there are many levels of rhythm, obviously. I mean, because the shot's moving, the movement within the shot, the cuts between each other, and so forth. I trace is 180, which I point out, and more, which you'll see unpacked now in Bonnie and Clyde. So converting three-dimensional space into 2 dimensions, I'll just give you an example that's where you can really feel it, is that in chase scenes, usually we have a chase scene, so you have the camera taking us up at, let's say, frontal, and then going to a 90 degree. So as it's going between one angle and the other, usually at 90-degree shifts, sometimes at 180, we get the feeling of somebody moving through space. I didn't ask how many of you were DPs, did I? No, the DPs know this. How many of you are DPs? Ooh, you want to know what they're fucking with. They're fucking with you in the editing room, huh? It's like, I shot this shit and now they're not using it. Okay, spatial continuity. I am here in the wide shot, and then I'm here in that dreaded medium shot. Or I've got this in my hand here, and then I'm like this over here in the other angle, right? Okay. Professor Doctor gave us some numbers in order to really make his point. I'm going to give them to you. That's all you need to know. You can walk away now. The rest is just show business. The rest is just the rest of the... I mean, I'm going to, prove this to you, and then some more about why we get distracted by the very things that we think we know. 4% spatial continuity. How many people spend 7 hours in the editing room trying to get that match cut right? 4%. And he said always, this is Professor, he said, fail going up. So the top 3 are the most important for him. Not even eye trace, right? When 2 people and you don't get the feeling that one is looking at the other. I'm not even saying that he's looking another way, but he's not looking at each other. All right. So in order to see this, I mean, to give you examples, I'm going to give you the first 10 minutes of Bonnie and Clyde. I want to give you a little trick question. You'll soon forget it because, of course, I want you to look at the editing, see what you pick up, continuity, whatever strikes you. And then when you realize that you haven't been following it because you've been pulled into the story, just notice that moment when you realize that you haven't been following the task at hand. Because it's just feeling that shift is necessary to realize how it sucks you in. How many people have seen this film already? How many people haven't? Okay, you know, they were a couple and they robbed banks in the 30s. And there's a great backstory on this, which I won't go into. But the script, needless to say, I got to tell you, Truffaut had the script, Godard had the script, and then it got to Warren Beatty. And it was his first outing as a producer. And I will say that Dee Dee Allen, who died in the last 2 years, Jack Warner, when he saw this is 1967, when he saw the first cut before it went out, he said, quote, "That's the worst piece of shit editing I've ever seen." Needless to say, it's a classic, and Dee Dee Allen went on to become a vice president of production. There was a Margaret Booth over at MGM who actually was an editor in charge for over 30 years who had the right to greenlight films. She would look at scripts. She had the right to say this film will go into production. That's the power of the vision of an editor from the storytelling perspective. Because they're not showing, they're experiencing. Ready? Any questions? Are you ready to go movies? Oh yeah, this is what I want you to do. I'm starting from the titles, because the music comes up at one point. So I want you to tell me why the music starts where it starts. If you remember to, or if you care to. Okay? So let's do the lights, and let's see if the sound will work. Okay, guys, back to Mr. Murch. 10 minutes and they fall in love. That's great. So let's start with my trick question about the music. Anyone want to venture? Why does the music start where it started? Okay, you think about that. I'm going to ask how many of you at one point, and just call it out, would you? When did you realize that you weren't paying attention to the editing? When Clyde shows up, from above or below? From above. Okay. Anyone else? When did you stop paying attention to the edit? That's pretty early. That's good. But then you try to stitch back in, right? You went in and out. Yeah?
Pretty much instantly.
Instantly.
Yeah.
How many of us go instantly into, right? You know how I am at horror films? I know what's coming, I know what's coming, I know what they're doing, I know what they're doing, I know how they're doing it. Right? Okay, back to the music. I just want to say, right, you're aware of that. That's interesting. Okay, I just want to point, you know, it's very hard to attack editing without actually drawing everything else into it, obviously. Performance, story, all these points. Production design. Did any of you see any kind of costume changes? Okay, how many of you who, like, seeing continuity errors found continuity errors? Okay, give me some of them, please.
I think outside the car when they stopped.
Outside the car when they stopped?
When they stopped.
Yeah.
And she gets out of the car, and then she has her hand somewhere.
Right. Her hand, she's like, hey, when did you come up with that? And then there's a frontal on her, and her arm is obviously, it's not in the shot, but her shoulder is not. You notice that? Did you notice that, I mean, I think it's the fastest dressing in an interstitial moment, right? When she grabs it, then she goes down the stairs. She's got some clunkers on. Now, when he tells her about cutting off his toes, she's got like these kind of like airline slippers. Anyone see that? Right? Did you care? Did you notice Clyde's, you know, this very, you know, when he's really seeing her, right? When you were 16, no 17, you know that whole scene in the cafe? Did you notice his eyes were out of focus in like whole shots? Okay, who didn't notice? Great. Who noticed and didn't care? That's it, you know? I mean, this is the thing. If we're on it, we really don't. I mean, now there's certain things, like if it's a style of filmmaking, I mean, Kubrick, you wouldn't have that kind of stuff, and it would really hit you. So, I mean, it's not like it never matters, but we need to measure the matters. It's never binary. It's neither either or. Okay, so anyone want to venture with the music, why the music starts, when the music starts?
The title thing, Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, but it sneaks in, so it's not, but it's true, it happens under the title, but it actually happens right after the title, I think, as the title. But why does it start there? Right, well, yeah, it comes up, yeah, back there. Producers, it starts. I'm asking why it starts. Yes, back there.
I think it's the first credit of the actors and characters that don't die. The first credits they all turn red. So it's like you kill everybody that's going to die in the movie.
I love this. You know, this is, okay, so it's because the characters that don't die then come up and so, you know, this is actually what we do. We make up story. All I think that we do as filmmakers is we create a vessel in which the audience can pour themselves into. And we just control a little bit of that vessel. Somebody else? Yeah.
So it was matched to its ending point?
Right, and its ending point was? On her lips. Basically, that's what they wanted. They wanted to hit, I mean, I'm going to say it this way. That's the thing that hits the most. Everything else we're making up story around or seeing technical reasons for it. But they're doing things for emotional reasons. Now also, do you notice that her lips, she smacks them like she's looking in a mirror. But then she looks at the mirror, right? So when you are on the set and you have those niggly people on the set that haven't learned the right politics of shutting the fuck up, and they're telling you can't do shit because it doesn't make sense, right? They need to get more acquainted with film. They really do. And if you have that demon coming into your head telling you can't do this stuff because it doesn't make sense, tell the demon to go fuck off because making sense doesn't make sense. Like in a dream, do you ask yourself, does this make sense? Mostly not. Sometimes yes, it's part of the scenario, but usually not. So I mean, I'm just giving you my approach. I want to free you up from all that kind of thinking because this is really what counts. This sinking into this communication. This is a guiding principle, but it needs to bring clarity and not doubt. So whenever doubt comes in my opinion, it's the demon. Mostly if it hurts. When the thought hurts, that's the demon. When the thought is like, curious? Oh, let's follow that. Then you're actually riding the wave. This is what I love about, I remember this happened in Columbia. I have these students, it's like, I hate editing, I'll never do it. This is really terrible, I'm never gonna be. And then they come back and they've caught the wave. And they're there surfing along and it was like, and this is the demon. So the first demon is like, you'll never do it. The second demon is, this is too easy. It must be bad, it's too easy. I had too much fun. It can't be good. So anyway, we need to talk about these points. So the emotional line here is, what is Bonnie experiencing when we meet her? Boredom? Did I hear that? Right, boredom, right? It wasn't depression. Depression is like she'd be there on the couch with some ice cream. But she's up and down and up and down. Now, the conceit that Burnett Guffey and Arthur Penn were doing here, and you see it later in the film, is that they have very long choreographed shots. So you saw the jump cuts, right? Which were not really heard of back then to do it, at least in the American cinema, the Hollywood system. And you saw those jump cuts, yes? I'm sure Faye Dunaway did a great performance. It's not that she did not perform it well. But what you have right after that scene, when she goes down, and you have a minute of them walking. What are you? Lady mechanic, maid, who do you think I am, waitress? That's one long tracking shot, and it's when our two heroes meet. or at least have dialogue with each other. So if you, I mean, European cinema might address this differently. We all have cultural differences. But at one point, you have to recognize whether you're testing the audience's engagement through your tempo and rhythms. And that would be it, right? So let's do something in here to get the real force of Bonnie's experience, which is boredom. Very simple. And then she sees Clyde. Does she see Clyde? Oh, I'm going to do that later. We see Clyde before she sees Clyde, right? And it is a POV shot, right? If any of you want me to jump to I'll jump to it, but I'm just going to use your memories here. We see him before she sees him, but it was her POV shot. How many of you have thought you can't use a POV shot unless you establish a reason to go there? Right, you don't. Now, why would they do that? There are any ways of cutting the scene, but they would do it because, in my opinion, and I like to put myself into the editing room all the time, if they didn't, if you saw Clyde from her POV, you might as well call the film Bonnie and ... Clyde, right? Everything through a specific POV actually, but they're a team, for one. For two, and even maybe more subtly and more importantly, there is a narrative space we can go to in film where we know something that the other one doesn't know, that the character we're seeing doesn't know. Used all the time in detective stuff, mystery, horror. But this is just a moment, a stitch. This is not like the whole film, right? So sometimes we're in the editing room like, no, I can't use that because that means I'll have to do ba 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 ba. No, it doesn't. It just means, what is this moment? What is the particularity of this moment? What do you want us to experience? We see Clyde there, then she sees Clyde. And it opens up this narrative space, right? Just like when you saw the wide shot, when he says, wait here, and he goes to Rob. Did you feel that in your chest? That wide shot expand? Isn't that grand? What's the storytelling possibility there? It's thematic, but it's not story. It's the musicality of what we do. Now, you can, I mean, they didn't go to wide shots because that crossing is also him going out into the world to do what they will end up doing. So you go from the partnership, this closeness of flirt, into now he's going to rob a bank. And then they're close again, right? Because then he doesn't want her, which is not exactly making her happy. And that scene, how many of us as writers have heard that you have to know whose character the scene is, right? Whose scene, what am I trying to say? You have a scene, who's the driving force or who's this scene about, right? How many of us know that one, right? Confounding, right? Can you tell in that scene when it's hers, it's his, it's both. So it becomes very, it's more his because he's the one who actually gets what he wants in a way, but she's getting what she wants because he's actually tells her that she's the best girl in Texas, right? So it's very intertwined there. Okay, so I want to just talk about the writing of this. This is 10 minutes of flirt, right? This is 10 minutes of winning. She goes from like, I don't know, I'm just going to work, to, right? She's like, ooh, in love. So let's start with how he skewers her, right? I just want to, did you notice at the crossing of the line when she says, hey boy, and he goes up, where camera is on the right of him, he's going this way, and then the camera is over here, right? There was a little crossing the line there. Then you have the look between each other. It's 5 shots. It's called cracking open a moment, right? So when we are showing, we usually go 1, maybe a third one. When we're experiencing, our rhythm changes. We're like, ooh. It's like, we see her over his shoulder. It's like, is she naked? And then we see him. It's like, and he's looking. So like, is she naked? Right? I heard the giggle here because we were met, right? Good editing, sorry, but I gotta say this. I love to say this. Good editing is like good sex. You create an expectation in your audience they don't even know they have, then you fulfill it. We had this experience, is she naked? And then we see him going, is she naked? And we feel one with the character, right? We don't have to like, is she naked? Yes, show that she's naked. No, let your protagonist, feed that. It's wonderful. That's the playing. That's the little, my friends over here. I think I'm going to take them home. How do we know she's a waitress? That's cool. Ah, you have something else. How do you know? How many people feel that the nice lady here is saying it's a reaction when he says waitress? How many people felt that? How many people know what this guy was saying but doesn't? Wait. How many saw it? Was there a beat before? How many saw it? If you know what I'm talking about, you can raise your hand. There's a text that starts right after the titles that she worked in cafe before she's, So now we come to what we call audience perception, principle of 3. This comes actually from the stage, right? First, there's a foundation. Then you have, let's say the curtain's open. There's a desk. There's a whole designed room. There's a gun on the desk. That's a foundation. Somebody actually passes the gun on the desk and you see it, let alone picks it up. I mean, they just have to pass it. You see the gun on the desk. And as we know, in all theater, if there's a gun, it must go off. Understanding then happens when the gun is lifted, knowing it will go off because somebody's going to be shot. Or something cleverer will happen than what I'm just saying. But so there's a rhythm there, right? Principles of 3. That's very, very helpful when you're thinking something doesn't. That's why that thing came up to me, Sabina, when I was thinking about, right? It's like something wasn't hitting in one scene, and yesterday I woke up, I was just invited, graciously invited to be a guest in seeing a film, and then so very often if it's not happening in this moment, you might think of placing it a little bit before. Just like here we have the car where he says you might be the best girl in Texas. That's the beginning of a love scene that continues in the cafe. Why split it? Because you get more juice out of it, right? You get to build more, right? So if something is not happening in a scene that you think it should, you might think, well, maybe if I split it, and you can do many different things. The magic is that you can put a music cue or you can use sound effects. We've all been there, and it's just an amazing unfoldment of what happens. So the foundation here was this. But just going back over it, what you have is great writing, because he's right about everything, right? And the only time we know he's wrong is when she corrects him, and that's the only time she says something on camera. It's pink. It's a pink uniform, right? You saw the out of focus, whole shots out of focus. And if you listen, the dialogue is also cut to have, because we know that he's right about, and now you wonder when and how this is ever going to change. That we experienced 10 minutes earlier in the bedroom. When is this ever going to change? So again, that kind of arcing of energy is great. But we also know he's right just because of her response. Why does he tell her to change that? Who saw it? Raise your hands. Put that down. Who doesn't know what the fuck I'm talking about? Raise your hands. Okay, and the rest of you who didn't raise your hands, do you know what I'm talking about? Don't shout it out. Why did he have her change it? You know what? Who knows why he had her change it? Okay. Who doesn't know why he had her change it? Okay. You've seen it now twice, okay? All right. Remember, she's a waitress. She doesn't want to be a waitress. He skewered her on that. This is what we call eye trace. Walter Murch's point, 7%, right? Our eyes go across the screen like a Z. Now, the director did a good job, because what did he do? He casted a woman with big eyes, big teeth, and gave her chewing gum to camouflage. And he camouflaged very well. Most of us do not see that spit curl on the side of her head. Let's put ourselves in the editing room. What are they doing? They have this whole arc of waitress. Oh, I mean, they've done it right. They've done the foundation, the recognition, the understanding, and here no one's seeing it. And they have enough footage, believe me. With Warren Beatty on this set, you definitely have enough footage because he doesn't get warm until like take 54. It's true. I mean, Reds has great stories. And, you know, that he directed too. So what did I do? They could have left it out. They could have intercut it. Well, let's start first. They could have intercut it. What happens then? Back and forth. Makes it very significant, doesn't it? Puts a lot of weight on it. They could have held it longer. You might as well, like, in both cases, you might as well take a red arrow and point to it, going, spit curl, spit curl. They could have left it out. There's enough there to leave it out. She just comes in, puts it down, and then he's like, change that. What's that then? Would that work? Why wouldn't that work? Anyone have a thought? I mean, I've been, yeah.
It doesn't allow you the comparison of the way she looks to the way they done it.
It's true, then we don't see a comparison if we, but you already saw the spit curl, right? Yeah?
But it changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. He just tells her.
Changes the dynamic of the relationship.
In this case, he has a good reason, which, yeah, it's a totally different thing.
Right. So if he changes it, if he tells her to change it without having this very subliminal, and we don't necessarily see it, but we feel it, reason, right? We feel loved when we feel seen. He is seeing her the way she sees herself. He's not a Svengali. He's not turning her into what he wants to love. He is meeting her self-image. I mean, that's just another way of putting it, but it's true. It would change the dynamic of their relationship. So it doesn't matter if we see it or not on the first or second or third. Now, the problem, too, is, I mean, I showed this recently in New York, and there was a nice older Russian gentleman who didn't see the spit curl, and by the time he did see the spit curl, he said it was too much when she was there at the table and she turns her head and you see the spit curl. Like, they're trying to make me see the spit curl. Now, I'm sure that Didi Allen was not trying to have the audience see the spit curl. She was just using her performance of like, I don't want to hear this, because he sees me too strongly, right? He's unpacking stuff that's truly her most inner self. But it reminded me of the dilemma of being in the editing room and what creates this creative autism and what makes us not want to use a shot that has a boom shadow someplace that no one in the world is going to see because it's only crossing the screen for a whole of 6 frames. It's because we get inured to this. We forget to play. We go and we start going into this showing. It's just the nature of it, right? We've all done that. So what do? Drink a lot of water. We have to be like actors. Tabula rasa. How do you get tabula rasa? You know, I like to get up and jig. It's good. Gets the blood flowing, and it makes you feel silly, makes other people feel silly. But we need to, that is the tendency of the mind, is that we begin to see it and analyze it and immediately go into this, right? You know what I'm talking about? You been there? Okay, so any questions with the spit curl? See what's next. Oh, right. And then we take a break for 5 or 10 minutes. Some of you will come back, some of you won't come back. I'll be here for questions. We're going to take a 10-minute break, but I'm going to give you my only rule, okay? You ready for this? It's really important, right? It's like you're going to walk away with this. It's going to be there for life. But how do we know if it works? I mean, later on, I'm going to talk to you about test screenings, which can be truly torturous and unnecessary things, or test screenings that actually have a significance and lets you know how it's landing, and not that people. Somebody told me once at Miramax that Weinstein was like a dog. He had to piss on it to make it his. So, you know, they're inevitably, after 20 minutes of a feedback screening, people are making their film off of your material. And that's just the first part. You know, I mean, God knows that it has many different dimensions. But how do we know if something works? How do we keep that openness and that freshness? I'm still working on it, but it's just that that's why I say awareness. We need to be aware. Like, I can't see a movie if I'm tired, because it's not coming in. My dreams are taking me over. I can't do. I love falling asleep while I'm watching films, but I can't significantly add anything to it. So anyway, with that, I'll be here 10 minutes and pee break. Is that okay? Okay, good. Let's get some air in here too. Emotionally, right? We know how to cut emotionally when we've got characters. How do we cut emotionally when we have an inanimate object? So what I was going to show you, but I'm passing on, but you can see it in your head. We had liftoff to do, right? Liftoff going to the moon. Saturn V going to the moon. Footage we've all seen, various different fashion. How do I do it emotionally? I did it physically. This is all I wanted. I wanted to feel how much force was necessary to get that Saturn V rocket this much off the ground. And they shot at different speeds. They had cameras everywhere, so I used some slow-mo of just this fuel being ignited, and then this shaking, and I used obscured shots to see it as it's moving up, and then the release, and then you hear air to ground going, Yahoo! Because they're, Texas boys. They're just like on a road trip, but this one was going to the moon. So it's a fun film. Brian Eno did the music. It's a lovely piece of work. Beautifully, some shots that never, they had the cameras, some of the cameras were out of registration. So the archive is really like this, but the production rebuilt an optical printer and reframed every shot so that you have, the first spacewalk that was ever recorded is actually like honey in this film. But that's an example that I just want to give you is how to, when it's emotional, it's also physical, right? It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to get complicated. So here I just want to show you an example of, how many of you know the story of Jaws? I mean, the making of Jaws. How many saw, who hasn't seen Jaws? Oh, something to look forward to, but not in this case. I'm not going to scare you. But you know the story of the production of Jaws? They had not one, but 2 mechanical sharks. Both did not work. They had 6 weeks, they had something like 23 rain days. According to Richard Dreyfuss, Spielberg left before second unit shooting. He saw him on the plane going back to LA. Spielberg was convinced his career was over, right? And then Verna Fields, who was the editor, who they also called Mother Cutter, was the one who came up with understanding that this is like, let's use not seeing the shark. So I'm going to show you a scene that, and this is totally, the script wasn't even done, this was totally out of order. So I'm going to show you just the magic of putting things together. How many of you have analyzed this film? It's fun, right? Let's take a view into Spielberg's world.
Is the kid who was missing at the beach. His mother says.
My mic is now on. Yay! That scene on the dock. Okay, that scene on the dock is all post-written. That's all dubbed after the fact, right? And I'd like to actually show you, let's turn down the sound on this, if possible. If I can, let's see if I can do this without disturbing things. Can I? Oops, nope. What about, oh, I already did that one. So let me try. Oop, that's Rebby. Wait. You know what? I can't, with the way it is now, do scroll on it. How do I scroll on it? Can anyone help me with this? If I press play, oh. It's going to change the screen. I want the scroll on the bottom. Because if I press play, it's going to just start it. Right. Oh.
You want
I want to be able to scroll on it. Thank you, love. Try your best. In the meantime, that is the dog of dogs. Look at that, doggy centerfold. Woo! Because what I do like to show, and I just want to skip ahead a little bit, is I want to show you that scene without the music. I mean, I saw somebody, you were hiding your head, you thought something was going to happen, right? That's cool. That is so cool. Now, they're sitting in the editing room, and they're not hearing John Williams' music, because actually when John Williams played it for Spielberg didn't understand it and didn't think it was, and John Williams had to say, trust me, this is going to work, right? So the music starts, well, let me step back a little bit. You have it in your mind, the scene in his living room when he's looking at the book, right? So in the script, actually, we see the pictures before she comes in, right? Because his response is that would be show and tell, right? He's like, right? We don't get that. We just get the huh, but we don't need to know why the huh is, right? So they move that later. Why do they move it later? Because that scene on the dock with those guys was just not working. I mean, if you look at this without the music, there is nothing really as boring as seeing an object move through water that's not in a storm, right? It's just like, I mean, there's a threatening shot. Hey, there's a threatening shot when you see from behind the guy swimming and the dock following him, where if you see it without sound, it's really, it's so slow. And then they have a proscenium stage thing where it crosses when he first grabs it. This is all the shark, right, doing. And you're in the editing room, and you're looking at this, and you're Spielberg and Verna Fields, and it's just, it ain't working, right? Now, the demon will come in and tell you nothing's possible. But a good editor is going to just say everything's possible, because you have the music, you have the sound effects, you have the progression of shots. When he looks at the book, we're not looking at the worst shot first, I mean the most grisly shot first, we're looking at the build, right? The same as when the guy's feet are trying to catch hold of the dock when he's going up. The waterline is the perspective of the shark. The waterline increases as the desperation increases. So there's just these little kind of musical, emotional progressions that you create. And then you have the music. And the music, it's okay if it doesn't work. It worked.
So, where do you want to go?
I want to go, can I?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, there I go. Okay, great.
Go like trim, and then you
But how do we get it over there?
go.
Oh, I see. I need to trim it first.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. In that case, I'm going to play something for you beforehand. This is just Spielbergian, okay? The sound's off, right? Check this out. Okay, but the sound is out. Look, check this out. No, sound out. Oh, God, how could he do that? Now check out the camera. Before I trim ahead of this. So he's just looking there. Okay, now this is, I love this. You know that the Sheriff Martin is afraid of water. Look at the production design. Even his wife, because Spielberg has such great relations with women, is in blue. It's true, he's never been able to really do very strong with female characters, but we're not going to go there right now. We're just going to say that the wife is just as threatening as the sea behind him. I could jump a little bit ahead, then we have the line like, you get out of that boat. Right, look at, I mean, it's all water, and later on it's all water too. Now I'm going to, how do I do this? I'm going to let her, oh, you know how to do this. Without having to stop it? Okay, we could stop it, it's okay. I just want to jump ahead to the,
To where?
to the, It's this one over here. Oh, we don't have that again. So I can do this, and then I can do this.
Exactly.
There we go. Okay. So now we're going to go to the water, guys. We're going to. I'm going to skip the first part when they throw the roast in and just start. I want you to see when he finishes reading. I'm going to use a grizzly shot. Okay, there we go. It's not the grizzly shot. I just want you to see how exciting this is, right? They didn't have any dialogue, and there's a little bit of, right? The music has started already over the photographs, right? So they're not, that's a little bit late, right? Looking up, hey, he's going out, he's going out. Oh, that's really very threatening. He falls in, the other guy falls in too. We don't see him get out of the water. We don't see him lose his hat like this guy does. Do we care? No. All right. Now the music, by the way, is going down. And only when it turns and you hear creaking, does the music then again start with dot, 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 now, right? At this point, it's, okay, but let's just look at it move. Just turned in the water, really? Okay. Come over. Come on home, baby. Oh, this is really threatening. You're looking at it going, couldn't you make it go faster? All right, so now we have when you were like looking and he's, because you're hearing a lot of music, you're hearing a lot of screaming. This is also like really threatening. Now look at the water line as it's going to go up, right? Because that is the shark. And it squeak, squeak of the, and it's like, fuck you, I didn't want your dock anyway. Right? Interstitial, he jumps to the end of the dock. This is like, yeah, take your dock, fuck you, I got your meat. But you get a sense of presence of shark, right? But you don't get the presence without the music and the sound, right? But this is what we land with in the editing room. We get stuff where it's like, it's not doing it. And you saw the light stuff, by the way. I mean, the one thing I didn't stop on, which is usually what I stop on here, is the light continuity. DPs, how many of you were disturbed? Well, now we can actually fix it. Back then they couldn't fix it as well. Now we got digital, you know, God just wants us to have pretty pictures. I mean, pictures that work and not disturb us. But you saw that, you know, it goes to evening and the guys are putting out the roast. Then it cuts to Martin sitting there and you have the light behind him. You're going to see Rebbe again for a moment, and I'm going to just show you this. Is that the play? Here's the play. So, right, it's dusk. It's going on right on out there. And then we have the music start with these shots, and the light in the background is from earlier, right? How many of us would like stop? I'm going to stop that. Stop cutting any further because it's just like having him up there. Because it's not, the continuity doesn't work, right? Remember that is 4% for doctor, professor. Okay, and this is because the theme is space. I was going to do, we have, moving through space is something we pay a lot of attention to when we're shooting, right? And we want to make sure it's okay and right. And so I have an example I'd like to use from Seven. How many people have used Seven? I mean, seen Seven? Ooh, nice. How many people like Seven? How many people were disturbed by Seven? Seven is a story about a retiring cop who is being replaced by David Mills. So William Somerset, who's played by Morgan Freeman, is being replaced by David Mills. And in this town that seems to just be full of just evil, and comes upon, in the last week, comes upon that there's a serial killer out there killing according to the 7 deadly sins. And by the end of this film, I remember with my ex-husband when he left, he said, I don't want to live in a world where my daughter can see a film like that. And then I had another friend who secretly admitted liking John Doe, who was the killer. You know, it's like, ooh, you know. So it was very curious to me. And as my friend Sabina likes to say, this is große Kino. This is big cinema. This is the ability to use production design and camera and editing to hold up something that, or to create an experience that really disturbs us. Because if it were just the acts that he did, it would be disgusting. But the fact that we were deeply disturbed is how he uses cinema. So I'll begin to unpack. We have a city that most Americans are trying desperately to figure out what city it is, and even if you're not American, how many of you did that? Right? Where is it? You're constantly trying to figure out where you are, right? Production design is not letting you see this. It's raining all the time. It's dark. The crime scenes are dark and confusing. You don't know where you are a lot of the time. David Mills and his wife live in an apartment that suddenly shakes for no reason except that they moved in. And it doesn't make sense, actually, if you look at it, that they would actually look at an apartment and they say in the dialogue, this happens every 5 minutes. And you're there longer than 5 minutes before the apartment shakes. Doesn't matter. None of it makes sense. And then they actually end up in the desert after being in this city. I mean, it's kind of like you're totally... And it's a brilliant killer, right? I mean, on top of that. The only order or solace you have in this film is when William Somerset goes to the library, when he's reading for David Mills, who's he's not a bookish kind of cop. So what does this do? This creates in us a sense of insecurity. And it's very, very, very subliminal. And you're not sitting there going, I'm feeling insecure. You're not going, what's happening? Because you're totally following the story. You're following the relationships. But there is something that gets really attracted to the order of somebody killing according to the 7 deadly sins. Not to mention that our antagonist is truly the reflection of our protagonist, basically saying the same thing at the end of the film when he's in the cop car going to show where the extra 2, where wrath and envy are buried. He's saying the same thing that actually we'll just hear Morgan Freeman say in this one scene. Now, this is when he goes in to see where these are 2 scenes together. Just check out, because this scene is not for the information, but just for the camera work. And then he's going into where Gluttony's home. And just a little, I mean, you're going to giggle, and I just want to unpack it now. No, I won't unpack it now. You'll get a giggle then later. And I'm going to hit play. And we need sound on this. And how do I, play. For the next, turn this around for the next scenes. Let's start with the fun, giggly stuff, okay? Right? When he cuts through the keep out tape, it's like Bonnie with the mirror. It's inside, they have a keep out tape. There are no rules here, right? He wanted to see. I mean, the knife is it's actually more significant in a scene was shot that's not there. It starts actually on the house that he does have that we hear about here. Let's talk about the writing. Pieces of plastic that were found in the fat boy's stomach mixed with food. But he doesn't respond. And then on leaving, he says he was forced to eat it. Or what was his line of the? It was fed to him. Same thing. This is, again, the beats, the foundation, the recognition, the understanding. Because then we have an understanding when he turns and stops It's not, so when we're writing and we think, well, we said it, you want these things to sink in, right? The cop, his chief, does not think he's gotten it, even though he basically said it was mixed in with the food. We know that he was forced to eat. This was already established a lot sooner. But the thing that stops him is that it was fed to him. Same thing, just a different way of putting it. And it stops him. When he comes in and he's got the back of the neck shot, it's like he's giving us a feeling of like the hair is going up on the back of the neck. Lovely stuff. I mean, like, you know, how do we choose our shots to be really more visceral, right? We go into and and this is the reason, actually, I mean, this is the argument for more planned filmmaking than just grab a camera and go with Cassavetes style. I mean, who had some great actors. Because you can do these things like blocking that really give a significant reality, accentuates the relationships and the power dynamics. Like in Jaws, when the mayor says Martin, and he makes him go behind the desk instead of being in front of the desk, right? He should be more of an authority. These little moments that aren't like anything that registers in our mind, but as directors, and certainly then as editors, as we're choosing and helping create things, that we understand these movements. But here we have two moments where it's just totally in black. Besides that, it's dark and it's really in black anyway, and I'm really sorry about that. He doesn't let us see everything here. He doesn't, just in the choices there of like a moment of black, when he puts down the vial with the linoleum in it, and then when he pulls out the refrigerator. What we're hearing when he walks in, what does it sound like? What does it sound like? What? Children? What else? Birds? Some people say rats. Right? We don't know. He's constantly using things so that we don't know. Intermittently, he's just spicing it up, and he plans for it. So the next thing, can I turn this around? Is that okay, guys? It's a small monitor, but at least you'll be able to check it. That's just like, you like being in the spotlight. It's okay. Now, this is particular about how using confusing space, allowing for confusion to really hold up the theme of a story, and it's tracking this. This is going back to the question before of if you have these scenes that you know work, how does that in relation to other scenes? Well, this is how it's in relation to other scenes. He's using this big cinema. He's using his photography, he's using his sound, he's using his production design to really get below the surface, deeply below the surface of our consciousness, to the point where even that last scene in the desert, that's totally out of the blue, and how could it be in the desert now when we're over there? We don't care. I mean, how many of us cared that we were in a totally strange place? Because, by the way, the writer, he wrote that he was in New York, he hated New York. And this was actually New York, but it's not the New York I know. So then we have, so it started with gluttony, and then we had this scene with, that we saw earlier in this film just now, where Mills is alone with greed, where the guy was forced to cut off a pound of his flesh. He's a lawyer. And now they're waiting, and they found out, then they come together as friends, kind of being brought together by Gwyneth Paltrow, the wife, and they figure out the clue about the wife of the lawyer who was killed. She was left with kind of a picture of her was left with this mask on it, and they realize it's looking at, they're taking pictures of the crime scene to this wife, and she says this painting was hanging the wrong way. They take down the painting. There's nothing, except when they spray it for fingerprints, there's a palm. And that goes into the system, and they're waiting to get the answer on that. And Everybody can see this if they can't see otherwise. Again, apologies. What am I doing? Oops, nope, I've got him up. Here, I'll do this, and I'll play. Even though you knew it was coming, you still, it's like in Aliens when she, you know, it's like, what's that? You know, to the doctor. Okay, so here we have, Fincher likes doing this, and by the way, Fincher did this in Aliens 3 and it didn't work. If you want to go look at it, it's, I was going to bring it in, but it's too long and it's too complicated in a way. Not to analyze, but just to stay with it. It's, how many of you know Aliens 3? Alien, right? Okay. So at the end of Aliens 3, she's on a prisoner's colony, and the alien is there, and they figure if they got him in a lock where they actually have molten metal come down on it, it will kill it. So she's standing, Ripley's standing in the lock, Sigourney Weaver, and you have these prisoners who also have some kind of strange religious belief at this point after their stay here. They play possum. Playing possum meaning they run out to try to get the alien to chase them and to close the locks down and forcing him into this one space. And then he even uses the POV of the alien. And I was watching this and going, this is what I do sometimes, I watch things and I go, why don't I care? You know, that moment, it's like, what, you know, I want to care, but I'm not caring. And then I thought, aha, Professor Doctor is incorrect. It's the spatial relationship. I don't know where I am in space, therefore Murch is not right. And then about 3 years later, I was looking at it going, no, he's right, because I'm not following emotionally. He could have cut it differently, that it could be more centered on Ripley, and therefore this action, but it's distracting. It's these guys running, and then the POV of the alien, and there's just not enough anchoring. But I'll let you go look at that. Here, what we have, I love this, SWAT before Dicks. They love this, right? And they bang down how many doors? 2 doors, right? In order, or they're coming from 2 different directions. You don't know where you are. And he does it intentionally. I mean, you can, Brad Pitt at one point turns around and he's walking, and then you actually see also even the space. There's one cat figure that's there, but it's totally confused. It's totally confused, and that's the point. That you don't know where you are. And then you land. It allows that. He also does these nice rhythms here. They go out, you know, ladies and germs, and the cars, he has this nice driveway where all the cars have to like hit their bottoms, right? And then they're in the cop car together. 2-camera shoot. A 2-camera shoot. And when he says, Christ, Jesus, what was his name? Right, the light comes through. That was serendipitous. Right, and Jesus, what was his name? Or maybe it's the other Jesus Christ, what was his name? It's, you know, because it's a lot of God-devil stuff going on in here besides the sins. And there's this moment, right, that you're with your characters. You go from they're together, SWAT's taking over. There's this moment of still connection between them. This is the writing I'm talking about, and the serendipitousness of the sun coming through. Then they end up here, beautiful movements, one going up, you know, just beautiful movements, right? Where's the DPs here? Yeah? Happy with the movements? Yeah, right? And then they go in and you do not know where you are. And then they land. At one point, Brad Pitt walking, and you see the air fresheners connecting him together, even though he's nowhere near the room, right? Then he's just with SWAT. So I'm just pointing this out because a lot of us, when we go in the editing room, we think we need to make these things clear. And what's really clear here is that we need to feel the force of SWAT. We need to somewhat identify with that guy when he says, you deserve what you got, right? We need to feel that character. And besides them being in this phalanx and a little bit here or there, we're not we're not getting them, but we need to land on them and feel them. There's a little bit of following that. Should we look at it again? No. I just love when he goes, ah! See it coming, I'm like, no, no. Every time. I mean, how many times can you see it? And the thing is that in the editing room, we keep on seeing this thing happening, and then we think, oh, it's not working. But how many of you know Annie Hall? Okay, in the cocaine scene in Annie Hall, which was written, by the way, do you know the book, When the Shooting Stops, the Cutting Begins? Ralph Rosenblum. He cut the first 6 of Woody Allen's first 7 films. Just take a note of that. This is chapter 19, I believe, and it's on Annie Hall. He also cut the producers, and so there was, I mean, there's a whole story to that film. It was really made in the editing room. Woody Allen wrote the scene about the cocaine, right? They're there, you know, doing cocaine with friends, and the dialogue there is simply that they're going to be going to California, and the friend says, really? Maybe you can bring me some cocaine back. And Woody Allen's like, really? What, you know, how much does this cost? Well, about $1,000. Cocaine all gone, right? That was only written in order to stitch them going to California, where Annie says, you know, he doesn't like traveling, but, you know, he's got this show. And anyway, the sneeze, the laugh. At test audiences, good reason to do test audience. They had 1 second, wasn't long enough, into the next scene. 2 seconds, kept on adding seconds, which is a lot. 6 seconds is what they landed on in order to actually hold the space for the laughter that ensued. Right? So that's a good thing to keep in mind about testing, because when we know somebody was saying, laugh, when you know something's funny, how do you honor it and not milk it necessarily? And we get inured, right? We spend so much time with something, then we think we need to, some of us cut too tightly, right? I started out too tight cutter, much to how many of us too tight cutters? Oh, this is the honesty I get in this room? Haven't I done enough to get a little bit more? Okay, too slow cutters? Too wide? Okay, that too, okay. So, these are two, you can keep on looking into this film, but there's a lot that Fincher gives us in this wildness of what you might look at as arbitrary. I mean, really not knowing. And really realize that you're not trying to figure out where you are. You're just in it. And what he does here editorially is he stitches you back into our detectives. Until you see those air fresheners, he stitched you in, and then you're entering this room. And by the way, Somerset walks in, William Somerset, Morgan Freeman. He's the one who sees sloth, even though it's damn big there on the wall, right? But no one's like saying, well, no, but somebody else would see it, right? Because it's his thing to see. He's the one who saw this was a serial killer. So, I mean, that's writing, and then the unpacking is the direction, and here is the total wildness of not letting you rest. So I'd like to open up for questions before I go into feedback screenings. We still have a little bit of time together. Any questions to date? Oh, but I was supposed to open up space. Space is part of the theme here. Okay, while you're thinking, I'm going to talk about feedback screenings. The trick of feedback screenings, the real trick of feedback screenings, is not letting your audience ask the director any questions for the first as long as 20 minutes. They need to just give their response to what they experienced. Because the moment a director is asked a question, they're going to answer. This does two things. One, it takes the director from here into here and defensiveness. And two, it dilutes the audience, because then they start taking that information and stitching it in to what they just saw. And since our films do not come with a set of instructions, why start giving it to them for feedback screening? The moment you answer a question to the audience, including, I hate this question, did you shoot on a red? It's like, no tech questions, leave it. I mean, I'm a purist in this regard, but still, The idea is just to allow, and it's good to have a producer or an editor conduct the feedback screening. So, you know, people can't do it for very long. They will ask questions, but try to, and really kindly ask them to hold off, because because you're thinking, and don't point to things, right? Did it disturb you that you saw the wash hanging out on the right-hand side there, you know? Oh yeah, you know, now that you mention it, it's like, you don't need that. You can save that for later, but, so these are coming from New York. Hand out papers and pencils, give the audience a moment to gather their thoughts and write them down right after you finish screening. And then kindly ask them not to ask questions, but to formulate the questions as statements. No matter how painful, always thank them. Also people, I mean, in New York, nobody has time, so they're gonna, sometimes people are shy, they can write things down. And then hand it in. And I usually have 4 questions that I find of significance. What did you like? What didn't you like? And these are the important ones. Where were you bored? Where were you distracted, confused, or distracted? And as we know, when we've shown people films and they're saying, I was, and this is the thing about the principles of 3, I was confused at G. Ultimately, it's B where the problem lies. Or as one friend of mine who actually wrote for Spielberg, she showed her husband a script, a rewrite, and he said, I really like the ending that you did. You really changed it, you made it work. She said, I just rewrote the first act, nothing else. So that's also when we, or a friend of mine who did a Merchant Ivory film, Cutting, Glenn Close's film, oh, the name is escaping me. I said, I really like that first act. She said, you mean scene 23? So, you know, we know that. We just move these things and we try to find the ones. As an editor, when I'm doing documentary, I'm jumping from this. You might have questions about this. Oh yeah, try to also keep it separate. They make statements, but very often we have friends who are also filmmakers who want to then solve the problem. So another thing you can say is, please hold off the solutions until we get the response of what you actually experienced. Because to really try to keep the 2 separate. And it's hard because we're smart. I mean, I know that I like making myself really smart or appear smart. And, you know, it's something that we can get, you know, practice. Some people like Alan Berliner, who I work with, he only lets in one person at a time. You know, there's not a rule of thumb. I was working recently on a production. They were doing feedback screenings once every 10 days, which is much too much. And they were focusing on cosmetics instead of getting to the ground of it. So it's good to ask oneself why one is going there. Oh, this was, I was going to do a, no, there's a slide missing. Where's that slide? Any questions so far? Oh, then I'm going to do something else here. Sorry. My cursor's not coming up. Oh, there it is. So this is something I like using in the editing room. How many of you do documentary? Okay. It's a treat, isn't it? It's also hum to hum to hum. How the fuck did I get here? You know, what am I doing? It reminds me, there's a story of John Ford over Monument Valley looking through a telescope and going to his assistant, what am I doing? And the assistant, wow, Mr. Ford, you're setting up your next shot. And he went, no, I'm looking like I know what the fuck I'm doing. That's a man with 130 films under his belt, right? So that we call directorial stance, like you know what you're doing. So this is one of the tools I use in developing. It comes from Michael Rabiger, Developing Story Ideas, Directing the Documentary. He uses it in one of his other books as well. He started out as a BBC editor and then did his own films and went and ran a school in Chicago until he retired. And he expands it and contracts it. And I just find it very helpful instead of having to write reams of paper or have, I mean, sometimes the work, people like, what is your story about? No, what is your story about? And I hate this. It's like, why does this have to be work? I just want to play. So this is a way to play, and nothing's written in stone, and lets you drop into your theme. So you saw Rebbe Nachas, a dog. You saw his doggy centerfold. You saw him as a dog. You saw him as an angel. So I'm going to give you one of the things that I was working on. It was called For the Love of D-G, For the Love of Dog. In life, I believe in unconditional love. I will show this by making a film on Rebbe Nachas the dog and how he tries to save Susie from a broken heart. The main conflict will be between suicidal Susie and Rebbe Nachas, who not only does not know what love is between bipeds, but he doesn't have thumbs. Ultimately, I want the audience to feel what a loser Susie is and understand that even losers deserve unconditional love. So you're getting a journey, maybe some pictures, maybe some thoughts. I thought of like maybe having like a doggy self-help group. You know, I try to help them and they don't even feed me, you know, whatever it's going to be. But so that for developing, or you can do Columbine. In life, I believe America is a nation built on fear. I will show this by making a film on America and its relationships to weapons and mass killings. The main conflict will be between Michael Moore, the director, and, go on, say it, Charlton Heston. Main conflict, not only conflict, main conflict. Very simple, because he begins and ends with it. It's totally, took him 3 years in the editing room. I knew one of the assistants. Editor got co-producing credit, because Michael Moore is not going to give a co-writing credit or a co-directing credit. Okay, the main conflict will be there. Ultimately, I want the audience to feel. What did you feel? There are 2 beats at the end. It's hard to remember. One of the beats, he shot himself in the foot with Charlton Heston, right? If you look at that film, he didn't need to cut it the way he cut it. He made Charlton Heston feel like a fragile old man, and he didn't have to, and then he was disingenuous. Won't you turn around and just look at this picture? And then he cuts to him showing the picture. Excuse me, he had to shoot that after Charlton Heston walked away, right? I mean, we even know subliminally that that was totally set up. And for documentary, that's not so good. So ultimately, I want the audience to feel that there is hope if we confront and understand that even the best of us can't change the world. I mean, that might be one of it, right? But you want to just go into, I'm doing it after the fact, but he might have been going on saying, if you confront those who are violent, they will change, or will change the world, but that's not there. Not now, is it? But if had that been there, then he would have put the Walmart scene, or whatever it was, scene where they get them to stop selling the bullets. I'm sorry for those who have not seen this film. I'm sorry for you, I'm sorry. But it makes you want to see it, doesn't it? Okay, now the space is, okay, I'm going to sit down. I want some questions. There's got to be a question. What's my most difficult cut? Okay, I cut a film called Trembling Before God, which was about homosexual Hasidim and ultra-Orthodox Jews. And what made it very difficult was that it's a thematic film, not a story film. And that's hard. And we had 6 figures, 6 people that we followed, and it's not easy doing thematic. I mean, you still need emotional realms and arcs, and we went back to characters, but it wasn't a story. Just to be with it moment to moment. You know, how many of you had to cut fundraising trailers, teasers? Okay, so the idea is that you don't want to deliver something that gives the story away. It's amuse-bouche. You want to actually awaken appetite. What happens next? That's what you want. What happens next? So you can actually build that in a film. you know you're in for the ride. So, okay, and I was sharing this morning. There's certain things you want to start strong so that your audience, even though they give you a little bit of wiggle room, you want to drag them in or have them really be attached. And then you need to watch out for the 40, 45-minute mark. Now, I'm coming from my experience as a filmmaker in the West. But the 40, 45-minute mark, supposedly this is actually related to the difference between our intestines cleaning themselves and REM sleep. There's a switch. Because after 40, 45 minutes, you will find that there is, even if you like, there's a little, right? You had it here while you were watching me. It's like 45 minutes. It's like, okay, when's she going to be done? It's a weird thing. So you want to, you know, kind of maybe, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, if you're Monty Python, you'd just be, you know, now for something entirely different. That's the best I can do right now. Yeah, and then here. Well, there's a blueprint usually okay. So the question is the difference between a feature narrative and a feature documentary, or a documentary and a narrative, and so I mean, for me, there's really no difference except one has a guide plan, a blueprint, the narrative. And it's based, performance really is so much, I mean, the deepest crux of it is the performance. And the documentary is actually a lot more exciting a lot of the time. And the way and just like an audience can make their film on your material, I'm an editor, can make my film on the director's material. My job is to actually honor and pull forth from the director more clarity on what he or she wants, or if they're very clear about what they want, to see how to deepen that. Like Didi Allen, who did Bonnie and Clyde, by the way, she worked with Sidney Lumet, who was a control freak. He used to take the film and grease pencil it where the cuts were. And the woman Academy Award winner, blanking on her name right now, who did Lawrence of Arabia, who was David Lean's editor. Her name will come to me. She started out as an assistant. David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia, passage in... Ann Coates. Ann V. Coates. She was in New York, cutting a Lumet film and having this pencil mark, and her assistant asked her, why? I mean, you're an Oscar winner. Why are you doing this? And she said, New York, I get to go shopping. I get paid. So, you know, she was really cool about it. And what Didi Allen did was Didi Allen went in at 6 o'clock in the morning and started doing some cutting and then showed it to Lumet. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So there are ways. So I like actually at this point troubleshooting. I don't like to wait for the director to hit his or her head against the wall and, you know, get tired of, you know, square peg, round hole. You know, it's when they're willing to surrender to the material, but they still have the heart and the passion of making it into something, right? So then I ask them top 10, what are the top 10 favorite scenes? For me, it's a little bit like connect the dots, right? So, you know, and then this also helps, because then I know, I mean, for me, it's the last two questions, the last question. That's how we want to emotionally land, right? This is just what we're aiming for. And everything else is just musical. So it's kind of simple once I know it. Then, you know, when people directors get, if they don't have a very good relationship or they don't trust their editors, they undermine them a little bit because they don't feel they have control over it. But that's why God created digital. So there's a story of Mengele and Murch cutting The English Patient. And this is a story that actually came from the DP, who was an Aussie. And he was at NYU and he was saying there's even some shots that you never shot that are in a film. So Minghella, by the way, had his own Avid. By the way, it's good to have a dog in the editing room. They're very good at bringing down the anxiety. And Minghella actually admitted that his cut was not as good as Murch's. And then Miramax had a week left on their contract, and Miramax already came and looked at the cut, and they said, fine, we're taking it, this is great. And Minghella, smart guy, goes to Murch and says, what crazy editor idea have you had that we have not implemented? And Murch said, well, you know, in the scene just before she gives after we hear, we go back and we know what happened in the desert and she dies and Willem Dafoe gets the story. And then Juliette Binoche, the nurse, gives the English patient the ampoules of morphine to kill him. We don't have actually a shot of her hearing the story. There is a shot of her in there. What they did was that they went to the outs. There's a scene, and actors hate this. There's a scene where her Sikh boyfriend asks her for her hand in marriage that they did not use. But it had the right angle on it, and that it was a two-shot. They rotoscoped him out. They put a neutral background on it. She's crying out of like being touched in joy, but no, in the film she's being touched and sad, and then she gives him the ampoules of, and she wins an Oscar. What crazy editor idea did we not try yet? This is our job as editors, is we have to come up with 100 different ways to get this point. So what's good is if we actually respect and trust the director, and the director trusts and respects us. I was speaking to Alex Payne at one point in Sarajevo years ago, and he said, yeah, I sleep around with my producers and cinematographers, but I'm very true to my writer and my editor. Those are the people that he always works with. So I'm going to give you tips on how to interview an editor. I think it's good to ask an editor to find out how honest they are and how honest they'll be with you of like their favorite film that they cut, and what ideas did they have that the director didn't take that they wish were in the film, and what ideas did they have that they had in the film that the director took. And you can get a sense of their own. I mean, they're going to be very shy about it because their whole idea is, I don't have an ego. Just whip me. No, it's not true. Never sit in an editor's chair. Never take their mouse into your hand. You know, there's editing room etiquette stuff. And how do editors interview directors? I mean, similar questions. It's a sort of like, what do you like the editing room? What's your favorite? How would you like to work? Do you like me to cut and come in and see stuff, or do you want to be there all the time? And you know, if you're an editor who likes to be alone, how to get it in there that you're alone with the stuff as well. And you can just be honest about it. Is it time? Oh, the question.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about director and editor co-directing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any experience with that, what you think about it, something that I do, and I just want to know the dynamics, or...
Well, I just actually was consulting on a film where these two friends are. He's an editor, and he became, because he just took it totally on. I mean, it was very hard for the director to be with the material. So his friend took it on and really sculpted so much of it. So I think that's why he got the co-directing credit. How do you do it as far as who makes a decision?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard there's different ways of doing it, but I was just wondering in terms of dynamics. Like, you're talking a lot about like trusting the director and stuff, but have you ever sort of like crossed the line where you and the director sort of take turns?
Look, I mean, I was saying it earlier to the editors, you know, first 15 years of my career, I was fired a lot. I wonder why. Yeah, so, and that's where I learned, it's just this space that's necessary. But with a co-director, I wouldn't know how they do it with each other. I mean, it's a space that's necessary for the gestation. And there's some people who, again, I really do think digital really has helped this, that you can actually cut and fool around. I mean, I think by doing, so that's also helps me as a director. But, and I think that's why Minghella was also being occupied with it. It's just feeling, you just want to be close to it, and it takes away the anxiety. But who gets the final decision? That, I mean, should kind of be worked out ahead of hand, saying, you know, when push comes to shove, I'd like to still have that right, even though I want that we both be on board. But then it's also how you can dialogue about it. You know, what, somebody might be following this theme, and you can go, yeah, but this line here will come up and cross that. But you have to, in a little bit, share the same language. I don't know if I'm answering it for you. Do you share the same language with your?
Maybe I can clarify. So director, and then the director is a co-editor with the editor. And the director is functioning as a co-editor, but the director has the final say.
Is the director taking the editing credit?
Co-directing credit, yeah.
Co-directing credit.
Right, co-editing credit. The director's team.
Okay, see, now that is not a necessary thing to do. You should leave an editor his glory of having that one credit. I really do feel this way, but you can feel differently. Why take, you have the directing credit, it's your film. I mean, again, even if you do all the editing, why do you have this person in your orbit, if not to give something? So, you know, but I mean, I'm just giving you my honest response. I don't know more than what you just told me. So I mean, it is, because you get a better relationship with somebody when you're actually allowing them. You know, they say in my business, in our business, cash or credit. Like, if you're not paying somebody, then you should give them a credit, right? Right? If you're cash or credit. As basic as that. So, you know, if you're paying them enough, then fuck it, take the credit, you know. But if you're not paying them enough in the first place, and editors will do, I'll get with you, they will do 12-hour, 16-hour days and still not feel they've done enough. They're constantly never feeling that they're up on it because they're swimming, because it's a little bit like dreaming too. So I'm going to answer this, but we can continue. This is good. I'd like to know why you're taking it. No. Don't want to be attacking you. Yes? Oh, bookends are wonderful. I mean, there's something that's magical about that. There's something, you know, storytelling forms, not only storytelling is in our DNA, but storytelling forms is in our DNA. And the hero's journey is not the only one, right? So, the three principles, there are not three principles. It's like that wide shot that you saw in Bonnie and Clyde. There's just a landing and gratification in coming back. It's not for all stories. It's a wonderful thing to play with. And it's something about, and we're constantly playing with it, right? I mean, anything from, what's coming to mind is the book thief, right? With death telling the tale. I mean, it's not a book-ended thing, but it's this unusual narrator. Also, anybody who's against narration, I don't get it. You know, I mean, Billy Wilder, come on. It's how you're doing the narration. By the way, do you know the story? You know Sunset Boulevard? Right? Guy dead in the pool telling the story. You know how they did that, by the way, DPs? They put mirrors at the bottom of the pool, and they shot through the water into the mirrors to get William Holden dead there. Anyway, the original was a morgue with a dolly shot along toe-tagged corpses, and then a slow push in to the one toe-tagged foot that began telling the tale. This, in a test screening, elicited laughter that Billy Wilder understood was not the laughter he wanted. And he reshot the beginning. And then the story of Some Like It Hot. There was a test screening, 1959, cross-dressing guys, not good. I think it was Warner Brothers. It's like, no one laughed. 600 people, no one laughed. Studio wants to pull the film. Billy Wilder, maybe he understood astrology, who knows? He was like, we're going to try again. But that's just an example. So if you're going to do a test screening and keep it limited, I do like the principles and the rules of three. Do things in threes, right? Which reminds me also of like when you're doing a documentary or story. One person as a protagonist is a portrait. Two people is always a comparison. You're always going to have a dilemma when you're portraiting two people of how you're going to end this. Is it a competition? What's happening there? What is a conflict or resolution? And three people, you bring in the universe, which is Thoreau wrote in Walden Pond. He said in his cabin on Walden Pond, he had 3 chairs, one for himself, one for a friend, and the third for the rest of the world. So there's something that a facet gets opened up when we have that third. And it's like a chord. You can't have a chord without 3 notes, at least not in Western music. I don't know about Eastern music. Chords are different. Yes.
When you talked about the thematic editing in the theme, and when you have problems of abundance, where you have lots of footage and everything is wonderful, do you check your own personal point of view, or how do you deal with that?
So the question is an abundance of good footage. We had 450 hours in Trembling Before God, and it was not good footage, a lot of it, which made that easy. What I find a lot in documentary is that we tend not to, people repeat themselves and scenes, you know, how do you actually bring up the dramaturgy? How do you have it raise up? So you'll find that you're going staccato like along. And it's always your gut. It's always your preference. I mean, a lot what got me in trouble early on is that there's always that other, for me, comedic film that I'm doing, and that I found that I was commenting to the director, which was not respectful and didn't really garner trust. But whatever, you know, tickles you, whether, I mean, you can still use it even if it makes you laugh. It's just that you know that it's effective.
So you stopped second-guessing yourself at some point?
Well, okay, second-guessing. Okay, come on, stand up. Who second-guesses themselves? Right? Standing up is very good, too. You know, you have to get some energy going. That is the demon. That is the demon. And the demon is like Monster, Inc. We laugh at the demons, they go away. They're like, ee. But who was I saying it to? I was saying it earlier. The creative is tender. So if the voice in your head is not tender, it ain't creative. It's just the demon. And if you can remember that, then you can actually begin slipping, you know. And sometimes I do this to my demon. Talk to the hand. I ain't listening. You know, whatever it takes, you know. But it's really, doubt is not, it's not curious. If it comes in, you know, it's hard to separate, just like all this is hard to, but you can just be curious, like what just happened? Do I need to eat? Maybe I'm tired. You know, sometimes we wake up and we feel teary and we don't know why. It's like, oh, today I'm feeling teary. You know, maybe I just need to sit and cry, or sometimes the tears come and you don't even know what. I mean, whatever it is, or laughter. I mean, but it's to be curious about it, opposed to this hard whip on oneself is not. I've never seen it work for people. It just it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time away, You're getting me on my spiritual thing. Because this was truly my first spiritual teacher is the editing room. Because it taught me how to be in not knowing, but not only not knowing, but delight in like the free fall of not knowing. Like, wow, you know, and all this stuff coming in, I don't have to respond to it, but I can be in wonderment of it. Because we're just portals. That's all that's what I think. We're time. Anyway, thank you.